Escape. 2 dots.
Welcome back. If you haven't watched part 1, please do, where I spun this lot of computers on my homemade turntable, where I guessed what might be inside. Little did I know that I might end up finding religion.
Oh my god!
Of the swampy sort. Yeah. Part 2, Under the Hood. Starting with
Machine number 15.
Here we go. Opening it up. First time. I've got a GX1. I assumed it opened the same way. It doesn't. This thing is completely different. But look at it though. It's got hinges on the front like a Lada. I look inside. There's no dust. It's very clean. That's surprising. The scuffs on the case tell me that it was used at some point. I like this design. But as I mentioned back in part 1, this is a P3, so I was hoping there might be 1 or 2 ISA slots, just like in my GX1. Here I am struggling like an idiot trying to get this thing out. Finally it pops out, and I have a look. And now, for me, it's gotta have ISA slots. And you might say,
But why?
this is why. You start off with 1 or 2 computers, and then you find more, and more, and more. Because you can't bear the thought of this stuff ending up here. E-wasting away. So you need to set limits. And this is mine. Computers with ISA slots to power the Opal 3 chip. ISA PCs. Pardon my digression, back to the computer. Okay, so I already know that I'm not going to keep this thing, so I am just going to make sure that it works before I put it in the donation pile. This is a Socket 370 chip, and look at that cabling. It's a smart design. It's got everything you'd expect on the back. I don't see any bulging capacitors, but the power supply, February 12, 2001. Almost 22 years. Struggling to focus on the Intel chipset. There's only 2 RAM slots, and there's that CR2032, and this is where they neatly stuff all the drives. Off camera, I pulled out the hard drive. It's a 40 gig. In the AGP slot, 4 meg video RAM card, and of course I broke the plastic trying to get the thing out. So whoever ends up with this machine, that's where I put it. So I put it all back together, plugged in the keyboard, mouse, monitor, power. Alright, first startup. Here we go. And nothing. Great way to start. Is this how all these computers are going to go? But I've been here before. Sometimes it's something very simple that prevents them from starting up. So I need to flip the hood open again. And when I look inside, there is nothing smoking, and all I see is a little flash, but the power supply fan is not turning. I try it again. I thought, hey, I figured it out, hooray. Close her up. But no, I get no video output, and just this blinking LED. Power supply fan still is not turning. I'm guessing it probably should though. But all it does is make that annoying sound. Close her up. So I start with the CMOS battery. Hey, look at that. It's a bit low, but it's doubtful it's causing the power supply not to work. Okay, open her up, drop the battery, fumble with it, and stick it back in the holder. Okay. What do we get? Nothing. Absolutely same performance. All I get is the same blinking LED on that power button. So, thanks to Necroware, his awesome channel, I learned about the retro web. Whatever you're looking for, you'll probably find it. It rarely lets me down. But enthusiasts are constantly updating this web page, so it gets better day by day. I click on motherboards, I select the manufacturer, and then I typed in Optiplex GX150. And not so surprisingly, there it is. I say that because it's a huge brand, and of course, people have these machines still in their collections. I have a look at the picture, and of course, that's exactly what I have. In the description, it tells me it's a Socket 370. I already figured that out. There's 3 tabs, description, downloads, and CPUs. I then click on the downloads. And that shows me a whole bunch of drivers and also BIOS images, which could come in handy later if it doesn't fire up properly. and the user's guide, which I am hoping will have what I need. And under solving problems, there is messages and codes. I quickly scroll down, ruining your eyesight, and I find diagnostic LEDs. Front panel LEDs blinking yellow. The system power supply may have failed. So do we fix it or do we just move on?
Survey set!
No ISA slots. I got enough junk. Moving on.
Machine number 14.
The badge says advanced computer. Let's find out if it really is. Sped this up. My hands don't move that fast. Spin it around, and just like you, as I stand there, I have no idea what's inside of this thing. There was no label on the front of this one, but right away I can see that's a Slot 1 Pentium 3 processor. That's good news. Ooh, there's an Asus video card in there. So what else do we have? Let's have a look. The camera has a hard time reading that label, no matter what lighting I try. So here's the close-up, and it's a 500 megahertz. Would have preferred 1,000, but hey, what do you expect? Better news, it's an A-Open board. That's awesome. I've seen one demonstrated on Phil's Computer Lab. That's a great channel as well. Having a look, we find an Award BIOS chip from 1998. First card I pulled out is the Ethernet card. I prefer just to transfer files in other ways. And I pulled out the rest of the stuff. I'll do it differently on the following computers, but this is spinning rust, 60 gig hard drive. I think these things are prone to fail, and especially when they're this old. Junk. Next is this cheap Creative Labs card. I've got a bunch of PCI audio cards. They don't have Opal chips. Moving on. Ooh, an Asus V7100 Pro. Is it any good? I have no idea. The fan is pretty clean. Anyway, I pulled out these three slightly disappointing 64 megabyte PC133 RAM modules. I prefer them in the 128 or 256 flavor. Hiding behind that USB card are two ISA slots. Woo! I noticed he had these plugged in unconventionally. Is that pronounced Tame Star? Not flattering. But it is an ATX with minus 5 volts, which is cool. Cooler still is this floppy cable with the 5 1/4 connector. I only have one 5 1/4 drive, but whatever, it's great to have. Out comes the battery. Here we go, second test. In goes a passable battery.
Here we go. First try. Ho! Yes.
Getting in closer, and we see none of the drives are being recognized, but it is a Pentium 3 500 megahertz processor, but we already knew that. And as a result, I can't seem to find anything to boot with, so we need to fix that problem. The fan on the power supply is really loud, which is annoying. But anyway, we managed to get it to recognize the Maxter drive. Next, it's going to complain about the cable, but we don't care. Moving on. And what do we get? Windows 98, of course. No, that's not the vacuum cleaner running. That's the fan in the back of this thing, howling against the brick wall. So, I fumbled to get through this. I cut out the multiple attempts at a 1, 2, 3 ABC and realized I could just hit cancel. So, into Windows 98. We get past its complaint about my monitor, clickety-click, Barbara trick, and we get to see what's on the hard drive. Come on, let's go. Enough of this. You're boring the audience. Come on. Nothing.
First install.
So, no embarrassing files to hide from viewing eyes, and in summary, we have an A-Open board with a Pentium 3 in a very nice case. Yes! Yes! Success!
Machine number 13.
This one has a cheaper case. Side panel was already loose. It's a little more flimsy than the other one. And it's kind of dusty inside. Right from the get-go, I assumed this was a Pentium 4. But I don't even know. Maybe it could be labeled wrong. Maybe it's a Tualatin chip. Maybe it's... Oh. Right. No ISA slots. Phooey. It does have a couple of cards though, so let's check those out. Have a look at the dusty cards. The Asus V9180 Magic. If it's any good, we'll find out in a later video. Caps look okay on the thing. Other side is a bit dusty, but otherwise, I'm sure it probably works. Another one of these PCI sound cards. That chip is okay, but it's not an Opal 3, and that is what I'm all about. And another USB card to throw onto the pile, followed by another Ethernet card to throw onto the pile. And the last card I didn't pull out is the extension for the USB from the board. 3 of the RAM slots are populated, there's 6 in total. After a quick search I found out that these are PC100, which are 100 megahertz. Probably better for a P2 rather than a P3. This is another ATX power supply that actually has -5 volts. This is the A7A266, but it's revision 104, and on the retro web, the only one I found available was revision 1.1. But most of the information probably applies to it anyway. There's one single solitary screw holding that hard drive in, and the label on it says that it's WinMe. And it's a 20 gig drive, which is useful sometimes, if it works. Speaking of things that work, another dead battery.
Here we go. Ah! It's doing something. Oh, making clicking noises. That's very strange.
And it continues making that peculiar clicking noise, but it does get into the BIOS setup. And then it crashes. This is me testing it once more. Still making clicking noise.
Oh.
And when I get into the BIOS,
something very wrong.
it locks up and won't allow me to make any changes. So I disconnected the hard drive, ended that terrible noise, and everything works correctly. So next step, plug the hard drive back in just to verify that it's actually the problem. The terrible clicking comes back, and if you've ever had a hard drive fail with all kinds of crucial data and photos you'll never see ever again, that's what it sounds like. Unlucky number 13 has a good case, but not much else.
Machine number 12.
Right from the get-go, I like these cases. There's 2 that are exactly the same, and we find out what's inside. And not much at all. I can see a hard drive and that's it. Take the camera in closer and we see all those PCI slots at the bottom. And pull out the hard drive. What do we get? I'll be just throwing this onto the pile of hard drives, but it's a 40 gig Maxter drive. And this is an Intel desktop board, the E21082, and a Sparkle power supply with -5 volts. And it's got P4 RAM in it, so I don't really care about that. I will leave that with the board when I give it away. I have no idea how long these computers sat in the garage, but based on the performance of these batteries, I'm thinking a while. Reassembled, here we go. And the first of about a dozen times I forgot to turn the switch on the power supply. And immediately it comes to life.
Oh, shit.
It finds the hard drive, but the date isn't set because of that dead battery. But as I'm going to point out, it is a Pentium 4 processor, the 2.8 gigahertz variety. So I go into the BIOS setup and I let the computer think that it's the year 2002, and then I try to boot into the hard drive. And it gives me that error, which I've witnessed before, and now I know how to cancel out of the password to get past that. And what do we find? We get another fresh install of Windows 98, which seems to be a theme with some of these computers. I have a quick look in the device mangler, and then get out of the computer because I'm not keeping this motherboard anyways, but I will keep that case. Let's have another look at the scoreboard. What do we got?
Machine number 11.
This one was labeled a P4, so I don't need to be disappointed. It says Windows 7 on it. It's not my favorite of the cases, but whatever, it's beige and it looks period correct. But, yep, no ISA slots, of course. But I will get a surprise from one of the machines later in the list. But until then, have a look inside this thing. There's a random piece of plastic floating around. And I speed twist the back piece off to release the video card to reveal an ATI 9200 128 megabyte AGP video card. Is it any good? Once again, I have no idea. I'll have to do some research and find out. Assuming it works, and we'll find out very shortly. Next up, I pull out the RAM modules. They're PC3200, 512 megabyte piece. They're no good for me, but I did notice that this is a 160 gigabyte drive. The motherboard in this case is the Asus P4 S-800 revision 2.01. And let's see, there's another CR2032. Any life in this one? Nope. Power. Oh. So I stop that terrible noise, reseat the RAM modules, and give it a go. And to my amazement, it fires up. And it verifies that it's definitely a P4. It's the 2.4 gigahertz, which I would have been overjoyed to have back in 2001 when I was still using a 486. Yes, I actually was. But when I fire it up, it doesn't seem to want to recognize the 160 gigabyte hard drive. I don't know if it's not working or not. I don't really care. I just want to verify that this Pentium 4 board actually functions before I give it away. So at least it's got a usable beige case, and that's pretty much it.
Machine number 10.
This is the second of the Bolen cases. I like these ones a lot. And as you can see, there's nothing in the expansion slots. There are no scuffs or marks on this case, which is nice. And what do we get? Well, the same thing as to be expected. This one doesn't have a hard drive, but it's super clean inside. It's kind of amazing. On the top, you can see all the PCI slots. There is a brown AGP slot as well. I am currently trying to pull the RAM out. There are only 2 modules in there. This is a Kingston Value RAM, the kind of thing I would have bought back then. And the other one is very similar, but I'll give both those away when I donate this board. These power supplies are pretty quiet, and it has -5. So just like the other Bolen case, this has the Intel desktop board, which I won't be keeping. Oh, a CR2032, is it any good? Not even a hint of life. Okay, does it work? Yep, it works. So I can confidently donate these both as functioning boards. Good case, but I don't think much of the motherboard.
Machine number 9. Number 9. Number 9.
The label on the front says that it's a P3 400 megahertz machine. That's promising. But after the last 6 machines, I've pretty much given up any hope on any hidden gems. This is a one-piece case. I didn't realize I had to take off the other 2 screws to get it out. So I pull off the lid and I spin it around.
Oh my god!
Just look at it. 3D effects, ladies and gentlemen. 3D effects. The Voodoo 3.
Oh my god, it's so clean.
I never owned these cards back in the late 90s, and I really didn't know anything about them until I started watching LGR, who I inevitably stumbled across when I was searching for Sound Blaster Pro information. This thing looks like it's brand new. And let's hope it works. So what else is inside this computer? I start off by pulling out the Ethernet card. Rather dull. Next on the list is the PCI audio card, and what is that? Close up, please. Well, no fanfare for this one. That's the CT4750, another PCI sound card. I've got a box full of these things. They are a dime a dozen. Next is a blast from the past. I probably own a very similar modem to this. Oh, that screeching connection sound. Another lackluster hard drive. This is a Western Digital, and how big is this one? 40 gigabytes. It's got 3 sticks of RAM. The first one's 128 megabytes. The second one is 256. And the third one, not exactly sure. I guess we'll find out when I fire it up. This Pentium 3 motherboard is an Asus CU-SL2-C. Battery test. The power supply is a high pro. It doesn't have -5. That is okay though. This is the big test. We'll see if the Voodoo 3 card actually works. Fingers crossed. It works. Oh, it's a 3000. Yeah. And because it had a dead battery, none of the settings are still in there, so I have to do a quick little reboot. And it fires up into Windows 98. I was assuming this would have some kind of game on there that I'd be able to demonstrate the Voodoo card functioning correctly, but no, it's a fresh install, just like the other ones. We'll have a look at that in a later video, but this machine was a score!
Machine number 8.
Back in part 1, I had no idea what Celeron 900 meant, and after doing a quick Google search, 2 seconds later I find out it's a 478 chip, which is basically a Pentium 4, so we're not keeping the board. But anyway, the case is this 3-piece design, which is pretty quick to remove. I like that design. Wait a second. That's an ISA slot, and that fan is like a socket 370 fan. This is not a Celeron 900 chip. It's a Celeron 900 megahertz chip, which makes this a socket 370 Pentium 3 motherboard. Sometimes it's good to be wrong. This is one of them. This is a QDI board, and I did a quick search on the retro web. But first, let's have a look at the cards. And the first is another Ethernet card to throw into the pile. Next I pull out is another modem. I really wish there was a use for these things. Maybe the speaker. I could pull the speaker off of it. There you go. Next, I pull out the hard drive, which is another to throw onto the pile. This one is a Maxter, and it's a 60 gigabyte. Big deal. Somebody decided they needed to label it, just so you know for sure. The first RAM module I pull out is a Samsung, and it's got IBM stickers on it. That's a 256 megabyte. That's what I like to see. The next one, I'm not sure what it is, but we'll find out when I fire up the machine. So, as I mentioned, this is a QDI board with a Phoenix BIOS, and I was immediately able to find this one at the retro web. Oh, how about our battery? Any luck this time? Oh. No. Love those QDI stickers, they're great. So, twisting the camera, making you nauseous. Another Sparkle power supply with the -5 volts. That's awesome. Let's fire this thing up and see if we got any life. We do. It's totally out of focus, but it says Intel Celeron, and there's over 500 megabytes of RAM, so those two were both 256 sticks. And the CD-ROM just decides to pop open on its own. I didn't ask for that. This is the ghost in the machine, perhaps. And of course, it's a Windows 98 installation, and it is taking its sweet time. Trying to be patient. Wondering if it's ever going to start up. Getting impatient. It goes right to the Windows startup menu. I'm speeding this up, and it reveals that it is just like all the other machines, a fresh... Oh, wait a minute, it's not a fresh install. Okay, so I don't want to reveal any personal information, so we'll wrap this one up. This is a success. It's got a good case, and it's got a QDI board in it that'll take 1000 megahertz chip, which I'm eager to find out if it will. So number 8 is a win-win.
Nice.
Machine number 7.
PC Wizards Performance Computers, it says on the tag. This is another 3-piece case. The side wasn't properly assembled. It's a little bent. And this thing is used. It is very dusty inside, and there appears to be some information. Unfortunately, the disc wasn't available, so we can't enjoy that music right now. Having a closer look inside the case, I'm getting the suspicious feeling that this is a P4. And here I go trying to remove the hard drive, the removable hard drive. I'll have to fix that later. And first card to pull out is the ATI Radeon 9600 SE 128 megabyte AGP video card. I'm sure that this was probably worth something at some point, but not really anymore. Next, I'm going to remove yet another USB expansion card. It's a 4x, which, these things were really useful. Some of them work better than others with Windows 98, so it's always good to have an extra one. You never know. I've had good luck with StarTech stuff. Next, I'm going to struggle to get this hard drive out. It's wedged right in there. The fan is a little bit bigger on these 478 chips. And what do we have? Well, someone's kindly labeled this one. It's an 80 gigabyte Seagate drive. And the next hard drive, this is a Maxter 20 gigabyte drive. Sometimes useful. Next, I have to figure out how to get that lock undone because I don't have the key. Inside that, I find the 80 gig Barracuda drive. I used a small screwdriver and picked that lock, got the bolt out of the way so that the drive would pull out, and that's the handle that I wrecked. I'll just put some pins in there and fix that later. This is an 8-bit BD72 board. I'm sure somebody would love to have this thing, but not me. Next, I'm going to pull out the RAM, and this is all Pentium 4 RAM, so I'm not keeping. Those are 256. Second one, I'm not sure what that is, and I don't really care. Moving on, a Tiger Pro power supply with -5 volts. Very nice. And what do we find in here? Oh, it's another CR2032. This thing looks like it was used, so maybe this one's good, maybe it's...
Oh, mother. Hit it.
Hooray! The Pentium 4 works. So whoever gets this one, well, here you go. You know that it's fully functional. So when I reattached the hard drives, I guess I put them out of order, so I had to reconfigure that, and then gave the thing another start. And this time, it recognized both drives, and it booted straight into good old Windows XP. And the following was a family computer, so there's all kinds of sensitive files on there that I'm going to delete, and no one is ever going to see on the internet. But nonetheless, there it is, fully functioning. Jinkuyan Shi, to the fine fellow that sold me this lot of computers. Some great stuff, and some not so great stuff.
Machine number 6.
Alright, this is a beige box, and the label says 478, which tells me that it's a 478 chip in here. So I open the thing up, and what do I find? It looks like an ISA slot, potentially. And that's what it is. It's an optional ISA slot on a 478 chip motherboard. I may have to eat my words. Here I've been hating on these P4s for so long because they don't have ISA slots. But I may have found one of the rare exceptions. This is an MX200 Pro 2 32 megabyte video card. Kind of generic AGP. Nothing special, and another one to add to the AGP pile. Another surprise with this board, it uses PC133 RAM modules. That's a 256 CL3. Another Maxter drive of the 40 gig flavor. This is the MS6391 motherboard, and I'm going to solder in an ISA slot. Does that say Vernon? I hope not. It's got -5, and a slightly corroded CR2032. Let's see if it works. The moment of truth. What do we got? It's booting up. And the first thing I see is Pentium 4. And it's running through the memory check. It's taking its sweet time doing that. Going all the way up to 256. And there it is. Pentium 4, 1.6 gigahertz. I had exactly one of those way back when. And it's got to run the check 2 times just to drag this process out even longer. Which I'm going to speed up. Because it doesn't do it just once or twice. It does it 3 times and then it fails. Stops at 176, and then I hit escape.
Oy.
And we get these yellow bars, and that tells me something has gone terribly wrong. So we try it again, just to see if it'll make any difference. I hit the escape just to save us from going through all that, and there we go. Another Windows XP installation. XP is where I left Windows and joined their competitor. I managed to miss Vista and Windows 7 and all that. This computer was somebody's daily driver, so rather than risk showing any sensitive material, I open a game of solitaire and we'll just make sure this machine will actually draw correctly. That sound is the hard drive howling away in the background. And I suspect there's something wrong with the way the driver is set with this video card, so we'll have to examine that later. But exiting out, let's see that scoreboard. So 6 has a good case, and this P4 board is a game changer. In a future video, I'll solder in an ISA slot and attempt to run a Sound Blaster 16 in that thing.
Machine number 5.
The first thing I notice is that that's beige and it's not silver. Maybe that will fit in the previous machine. Spin it around and there's a single thumb screw on the panel. 2 reveal. 2 cards and 3 hard drives. Things are a bit dusty inside. I'm sure it got some use before it sat in the garage for however long. So the first card that I pull out is the AGP video card. And it's an ATI Rage 2C. Not as exciting as the Voodoo 3, but it is a 3D card, so that would be interesting to examine later. But it's from 1998, so that's kind of cool. Next thing I grab is the RAM, which is a Kingston, 128 megabyte, and it's very tall. And this is not PC-133 RAM, so I will just be including this with the board when I donate this. And there was a third one, and it's not labeled very well. Anyway, someone has correctly installed all of the screws for the hard drives. So I remove the 2 thumb screws, and the other panel comes off to reveal all of those screws. So one by one, I remove the drives. The first dusty one is a Samsung. It's a 40 gig drive. The second one is a Western Digital 400, and that's a 40 gig drive. And the third one is a Maxter drive. And it's also a 40 gigabyte drive. To add to the pile of obscure drives that I probably have no use for. Similarly, the Ethernet card in this machine, yeah. So if you're lucky enough to be at the Value Village at the right time, you'll get this A7V133 for a cheap price. And another ATX power supply with -5 volts. Hopefully it doesn't blow up. But when I attempt to power the machine on, I get no post beep. I get nothing. But I did forget one thing. Yeah, that sneaky little CR2032 hiding behind the cables. Place your bets. Place your bets.
Whoa! Finally!
That was genuine elation over a near-dead battery. I need to sort out my priorities. Okay, let's try it again. What do we get? We get a green light. We get a red light, and nothing else. And when I push the button, but the meow didn't help. So I disconnect everything and it still makes no difference. Nothing is making this machine come to life. Pull the RAM out, leave one in. Nope, nothing. So, P4 board, don't want it. Goofy silver case. Moving on.
Machine number 4.
Okay, the last case was goofy, but this one is goofier. Plus, it's really heavy. I will definitely be passing this one on. But let's have a look inside before we ultimately decide its fate. So, as I have no idea how this thing works, I take off the wrong panel to start with, of course. Now, what do we have? And no, it's not upside down. That's the way this case works. As a result, I turn it upside down just so I can get that AGP card out of there. And I immediately recognize the Rage label. I've already got a couple of these, and, they're fine. They're just fine. Next, I'm going to pull out the RAM modules, and I'm going to leave that RAM in the machine when I donate the case and the board and that power supply, which we're going to find out a surprise with soon. That has PC266 marked on it, so that's probably what that is. There it is. The Asus P4 S-800. No thanks. And this StarTech power supply has -5 volts. Well, look at you. Just sitting there. Probably deader than a doornail. Linda?
You're no good, baby, you're no good.
There it is. It's like Y2K all over again.
Oh. Oh!
That was probably as exciting as the Voodoo 3 experience. I shut it down, I have a look inside, there is no smoke, I can't smell anything, there's no caps with the top blown off, there's nothing obvious. It's probably in the power supply, but I throw caution to the wind and I try to boot it up one more time. Maybe it'll explode even more. But instead, it fires up. As if nothing had ever happened. So if you manage to get this machine and you are watching this video, this is what happened. Proceed with caution.
Machine number 3.
If I only had a few retro machines, I would probably hold on to this one. But it does have an 866 megahertz Pentium 3 processor. And the case is in beautiful shape, but it only has PCI slots, and that doesn't meet my criteria. Next thing I notice is the RAM modules that I'm trying to remove are unlike anything that I have seen so far. That's only 128 megabytes, so it's probably got 256 total in this thing, which is kind of meager. And yes, it is 128, the second one. And that's a 15 gigabyte Maxter drive from the year 2000. Maybe I can plug this power supply into machine number 15 and see if that thing actually works. I don't know. Maybe we'll find out. There's the CR2032, and it's very difficult to get that thing out. So it's probably dead because no one's ever changed it. But
nope, wrong again.
here we go.
Rolling.
But it fires up just like it's supposed to. Had I not removed the battery, it would probably just say everything was fine and carry on. I get that error again, but I just exit through that and into Windows 98. And it's a fresh install, and there's nothing to look at. So number 3 is a great machine, but it's a bit disappointing. Doesn't have ISO slots. There was no extra cards included with it. So
Disappointed!
it's not for me, but maybe it'll make for a good trade. Robot.
Machine number 2.
International boring machine. That's what I think of the IBM brand. But that's me. Some people love these things. I do not. I had no idea how to open it. I fiddled with the lock on the top of the thing and then went to YouTube to find a gentleman in the UK who quickly explained how to get in without damaging anything. After all the disappointments of the last few machines, I was hoping that there was going to be an audio card that was going to blow my mind. But it's hidden under this pile of obsolete garbage, so I have to go through that first, which includes this Magitronic modem, which is a 33.6K. Kind of a shame. They are pieces of history, but maybe good for spare parts. There's a speaker, and look at that, there's a cache chip. Next on the chopping block, I struggle to remove those terrible little slot screws that they used to reveal this thing. which that laugh is because I just saw the sound card. But this is an obsolete Ethernet card, and it has a few outputs on it, but yeah, that's junk. So now I get to satisfy my months of curiosity as to what this sound card can actually be, only to discover it's just some cheap Opti knockoff card. And since it's an ISA card, it more than likely has Opal 3 emulation on that Opti chip, but like Marvin Gaye said, ain't nothing like the real thing. It does have the wavetable header on it, so yay, you could put that on it, but why would you want to? Maybe we'll have a listen to this thing at some point. Next, I'm trying to remove the awkwardly placed RAM modules. These are the 72-pin sorts. They look like 8 megabyte to me, but I might just be wrong. There are 2 of them. I don't know why I didn't show the other one. Next, we look at the power supply, and it looks like it's designed just for that case, and that case only. Swinging over to the main board, I do notice the Intel chipset, and that's an S3 video chip, so, you know, Trio 64. I'm sure that was a welcome addition back when they released this machine. Are those the cache chips? Those are unlike anything I've seen before. After a lot of work, I got the hard drive out. I remember buying a similar drive back in the early 90s for $350, and there was only 345 megabytes on that. Ooh, look, the CR2032. We got lucky the last time, maybe this... Oh. No. No. I had a look at the CD-ROM drive, and it's a Toshiba from 1996. But does it work? Here we go. Let's find out if this thing even works. It does. After tearing all the guts out of it and putting it back together, it still fires up just fine. Now, I did have a problem with the resolution on this wider screen monitor. It worked just fine with that 4x3 monitor in the background, and I was able to reset the display settings. And it complained about the CMOS battery, but I managed to escape through that. I escaped to DOS. Well, Windows 95 to be exact. Windows 95 Plus. You can hear that caviar grinding away in the background. Get up closer, and what do we find? Oh, someone has lived in this computer at some point, but I don't think it was really used. I think that they probably just installed this stuff to see if the cards worked. But it's got WordPerfect for Windows 6.1, which I fondly recall using. I gradually climb to the top, and I find Space Cadet 3D Pinball. This IBM machine works just fine, and I had a quick look on eBay, and yeah, they don't go for cheap. I don't want to keep it, but it might be worth something to somebody.
Machine number 1.
If you made it this long, you're amazing. Thank you. This was the cherry on top. But like they say, careful what you wish for. You'll find out soon enough. I can find little to no information about this machine or other people's experiences with this machine. Trying to remove this front cover is giving me a bit of grief. I'm gonna have to sand that peg that holds that in so tightly. This is sped up so it looks a little more brutal than it actually is. But there is nothing on YouTube other than my video. There's a few web pages with grainy pictures, and of course the Internet Archive has that 164-page manual. But nothing about current use with SD cards, with CF cards, so I'm kind of on my own with this one. The website with the grainy photos shows the same Cirrus chip in theirs. I'm guessing that's probably stock then. And these cache chips are only 64K of a potential 256. And we're going to find out that the jumpers were set incorrectly on this. It's very dusty inside this thing. There's dust bunnies bouncing around. That's a 540 megabyte Fujitsu drive. Have a little look at the modem, which is about as useful as a stripped screw. But it shimmers so nice. What a tragedy. Maybe I'll have to make some ISA art with it. Nice. But this was a nice surprise. After I realized that there are 2 full VLB slots, this is a Trident VLB video card. Those copper traces by my hand are the ones that go directly to the CPU and make the VLB card so special. Looks like I'm the only one who has one of these things because there's no one on YouTube that's got a video about it. I guess I'll be the first. I will look forward to running a whole bunch of tests on this thing to see how incredible it really is. And it appears that it has expandable video RAM. Maybe I can find some of those chips. Maybe I already have some of those chips. Nice indeed. So next we're going to have a look at the VLB slots. There are two. And I couldn't help notice that's a Sony CD-ROM drive unit. Probably still works just fine. So what is the memory situation here? Well, it looks like they're either 4 or 8 non-parity. So that's not great. There is so much dust on this motherboard that I didn't want to try starting it up until I knew everything was cleaned off, because who knows what's mixed into that dust. So here it is after I hit it with compressed air. It is much cleaner and there is no potential for anything to arc across those tiny little legs. And hey, there's my disappointing 64K cache. This thing doesn't work. This was replacing the other dead battery on the motherboard.
Hit! Good, we got lights. Uh-oh. 3 beeps.
And 3 beeps has a variety of meanings, and I don't even know what the BIOS is. So this is failed attempt number 1. So I thought maybe the CPU wasn't set correctly. But according to this little chart on the motherboard, and the chart that's on top of the CD-ROM, all says yes, it was set correctly. So maybe it's the hard drive. But that didn't make any difference either, so maybe it's the CPU. I dig into my 486 collection, thanks to Andre, who gave me the deal of a lifetime, and as I promised Andre, I would put this stuff to good use. So after the CPU made no difference, I decided to go where I should have started, and that's with the video card. But I was just so impressed by that Trident card, I thought there's no way it would fail me. So I took it out and I put it in the other slot. But still no video signal. Do I have to accept that this VLB card is a dud? So I try the only logical thing, I insert a known good video card and hope that we get some kind of video signal. Hoping for the best. Hit the button.
It works. Amazing.
Okay, that's step 1. The leading edge board still works. Now I know it's a Phoenix BIOS, so I go right into it. But this is a little unfamiliar. I've never come across this particular version before. It does have hard drive detection, which is nice, but it's still pretty basic. I stumble into the next page and enable the external cache because that was coming up as an error when it started, and reboot. And hopefully this time it'll work. And it doesn't. It gives me the same thing. At this point I haven't even looked at the jumper settings for the cache chips, but I'm assuming it was set correctly, but well, wrong again. What we have here are jumpers 3 and 4, and according to the chart, jumper 3 should be set to 1 and 2. But it's not. It's 1, 2, 3, and 4. And the tag RAM was set wrong too. So I set those correctly, plug that noisy hard drive back in, set it to auto detect, and reboot the machine. So I assumed that I had outsmarted the machine and the cache would work correctly and I would be able to get right into the hard drive no problem. And that's how I realized that it wasn't saving my settings because that replaced battery was also failing. But I was able to get into Windows 95. So I knew that the hard drive was functioning and I was able to get into it once it finishes the scan disk. Come on. Ta-da! Windows 95. And I'm speeding this up quite a bit so we can get in and look to see if there's anything other than just a fresh install. And yes, indeed, there is Office, but not a lot of files. I do see the Trident video driver. That's good. I'll probably keep that for later. Time to get out of Windows and solve a couple of problems. Starting with the cache. These are the 64K cache chips that I pulled out. I have a box I call my cache of cache. I'm hoping to find 256K so I can get the full cache out of this machine. Next thing I did was I used a rubber eraser on the copper pads on the Trident card and I sprayed it with the contact cleaner. And
Yes!
success. And look at the energy symbol. Didn't do that before. That's neat. Oh, do we have cache now? Fingers crossed. No. So for some reason it doesn't like the 256K cache chips that I put in there. So I reinstall the 64s, reconfigure the jumper settings, and what do we get? Well, I know what we got. Finally, external cache enabled. And Windows loads up a little bit faster. So everyone who's worked on these old machines knows this exact feeling that's coming up. I figured that I'd solved the problems and I was ready to move on to figure out how to use an SD card or a CF card on this thing, and wow, it was great. I had solved all these problems one by one. What? So, like I said at the beginning, careful what you wish for. Sometimes you can't anticipate everything that's going to happen in this life. Regardless, I know this thing works. I am absolutely happy that I have it. Yeah! We will hopefully solve all of those problems in part 4 or 5 or whatever the hell it goes to. Out of 15 machines, there are 3 of them with good Pentium 3 motherboards. There's 9 good cases, and we'll transplant those in a later video. There's even a P4 board which has an ISA slot on it to slap me right in the face for talking all that trash about P4s. There's a couple of machines that have some trading potential. And of course this fantastic leading edge Fortiva 5000. Yeah! Hidden away like an oyster's pearl.
The 3D effects. Voodoo 3000.
Inside number 9, where we thought there was nothing special. So there you have it. There were the 15 machines. I took them apart, I put them back together, I tested them all. Some of them worked, some of them didn't, but we had a lot of fun. And stick around for part 3, where I will electrify those 8 motherboards and we'll see what we get with that. If you can find a lot of computers, it is so much cheaper to buy them this way, and you never know what you'll get. Could be a Voodoo 3 waiting in a pile of junk. Next time on Escape to DOS, Lightning and Mobos.